All right, with me today here in BSE 308 is Don Stanley. Don is one of my favorite presenters in this class. And I will tell you one thing, every time that we do this presentation together, when Don comes in and talks to my class, I learn something new. Don, I don't know if you remember the first time you were in, I sent you a video thank you note afterwards. And the other thing that I've really tried to do is to do more open sharing. I mean, I'm a guy who's got lots of ideas, so I'm always posting things on Facebook and LinkedIn. And what I've found is that for me personally and also career-wise, that's something that's really made a difference. So Don is here. He is works with the faculty in life sciences communication. Don is also a small business owner and has done work with dozens, if not more, companies, not only here in Madison, but nationwide. And Don, we're really excited to have you talk about branding. Just let me say one other quick thing. A lot of the engineers who are in this class at first, when they see branding, they think, that's not really quite for me. You know, I'm an engineer, and maybe when I was in high school, I had the brand of being, I was the kid who was good at math and science. And now that I'm an engineer here at UW-Madison or wherever you might go to school, watching this, you're the person that people go to if they need help with their physics or their calculus homework. But guess what? When you get out into the real world and you're a practicing engineer, there are going to be literally tens of thousands of people who are good at math and science. And so you need to be able to go a little bit further. So we've got Don here today talking about the importance of developing your personal brand. So Don, thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's one of my favorite things to do is to join this class. I'm so glad that we linked up years ago and started doing this, because one of the things that a lot of us don't think about is, especially in the hard sciences arena, is that we don't need a brand, exactly like you were saying. And really what the brand is about, if you think of that, I kind of hate the term because what it implies is that there's something fake or something manufactured. But what it really is about is, how do I let companies, organizations, or individuals, if I'm looking to do my own gig, know what I'm about so that they might want to hire me? And so it really is the way, the whole thing that we're going to be talking about when it comes to brand is really about helping yourself stand out in your job search, or help stand out if you're looking for clients. Like as he mentioned, as John mentioned, I have my own consultancy. I've literally consulted companies on all 7 continents. I'm actually working with a company in Qatar right now, or Qatar, as I'm supposed to say it. I've presented all over the world, and people say, how did you get to do that? And the reason is because I started to get known in areas where I wanted to get known, and I got opportunities, and those opportunities allowed me to pursue things that I was interested in. So really, if you think about this as an opportunity for you to position yourself to get professional opportunities, whether that's graduate schools or it's a job, whatever it is, that's really what this is going to be centered on. So it's not creating it for the sake of creating it. It's creating it for the sake of being able to stand out. So as we start going into this, one of the things that I always talk to people about when we're talking about this idea of quote unquote brand is, when I show people these pictures of me in presentation mode. So one is presenting at an event for American Family Insurance. The other is actually your class last year when we were able to get together in person. Yeah. But what people do is they form ideas about what somebody might be like. So what we start to do is, when we see pictures, we see a resume, we see whatever, we start to formulate some concepts of what a person is like. And one of the things that I like to talk about when it comes to the idea of brand is, companies and organizations know that the average person in their 20s, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, will spend approximately 13 months in their first job. That's not very long if you're an HR person. If you're an HR person, the idea of posting a position, writing a description for a position, going through initial people that would apply to your company, and then going through the interview process and then hiring somebody is a huge time suck. It also takes a lot of resources to be able to do that. And if you think about it, for most people, when it comes to the idea of the first 2 or 3 months of you working at a company, you're not going to know enough to be bringing in revenue. So if I'm paying you $75,000, for example, to start at my company, first of all, you're costing me more than $75,000. As a business owner, you're probably costing me closer to $95,000 when it comes to all of the benefits, et cetera. But for the first 2 to 3 months, as you're learning a job, you're not bringing in $75,000 to $95,000 worth of value. You're costing me. So what HR people look for, and this is across every demographic, because I've literally consulted people in, you name a field, from nuclear engineering to the medical fields and everything in between, military special operations, you name it, I've done it. Is what people are looking for is this person going to be a good fit, both from an intelligence standpoint and a background standpoint, but also the cultural standpoint? Will they be a good fit to be at my company longer than 13 months? Are they going to be a better risk? So one of the things when we look at putting these images together, putting our LinkedIn profile together, or website, Twitter, whatever it might be, is letting people know what we bring to the table, not just professionally, but some personally. So some of the things that I also share are other pictures, and I put these in my social media feeds as well. So on the left-hand side, I do a ton of work with dogs. I used to be a dog trainer. I'm actually getting back into it. On the right-hand side, I do jujitsu. That's a really important part of who I am and the philosophy. And what happens is when I share little tidbits of those, even to my professional audiences and my peers, that starts to help them get to know me better. And so when we have conversations, we have points of conversation that are more meaningful. My very first big gig, I love this story, was with Getty Images. Mm-hmm. So Getty Images is huge, massive organization. And the reason I got the gig, I was in the finalists to be one of 3 consultants to work with Getty on their digital presence. This was back in the day. And the reason I got it was because there was a dog image, a picture of a dog in the vice president's office. And we started talking dogs. And I said, oh yeah, I used to be a dog trainer for Patricia McConnell. She had this national radio. Oh my God, no way. And we ended up talking dogs for 10 minutes. And what he said is, you're going to be so much fun to work with. We're going to hire you. And so sharing little tidbits of things that are personal to you, whether it's gaming or hiking outdoors or, little things that might be meaningful professionally, are things that we want to share, because we want to let companies and organizations know who we are and what we might be a good fit for, so that we can pre-screen as well.
The thing I like about that picture, there's authenticity. You've got a dog that's got, I'm not sure who has a bigger smile on their face. Your dog is obviously smiling. And your jiu-jitsu picture, it looks like you probably did either just get done with a sparring match or a workout. And so it's super, super authentic.
Yeah. And it's led to great conversation pieces too, when I'm in meetings with people and they're wanting to learn a little bit more, or we want to find out if we're good fits for each other. Cause like when I'm working in my consulting work, I'm getting interviewed the same as a job interview every time. They want to know, am I going to be a good fit? Am I going to be fun to work with? Do I know my stuff, etc.? And I get more comments and compliments on these pictures, especially the ones with the dogs, because smiling dogs, what's not to love, right? But that really is something, again, that when we think about it, the reason I'm putting some of this is to show who I am and what I'm interested in. Mm-hmm. And that again allows companies, organizations, and others outside of my sphere to get a sense of what I am like, and how we might connect. So when I ask people this next question, 99.9% of my audiences get it. And I'll say, okay, first person to answer this, John will give you $100,000. It's not my money.
And I've given away a lot of money over there.
Exactly. So who is this? And immediately people say, it's Bill Nye the Science Guy. And I'll say, stop and think about it. Why do you know Bill Nye the Science Guy? Because really, he's somebody who got his undergraduate degree in engineering, and that's as far as he went, as far as I know. And so he's just another engineer with a bachelor's degree. In why is he known? Why do we care about him? Why is it when there's issues on national news about different things, and you can see the diversity here on this slide, whether it's CBS This Morning, Fox News, or CNN, this guy gets the opportunity to speak about these topics, all different topics: global warming, eroding coastlines, science of masks. Why does he get to do that? And the reason is he started a kids show where he, back in the 90s, and I watched it. I loved it, by the way. So full disclaimer. But what he was doing is he was showing his ability to translate science from complexity to simplicity, not dummying down, but making it accessible to people of different ages, different backgrounds, different areas. And so he became known as somebody who has the ability to translate complex information to kids. And then slowly media started saying, hey, Bill, can you come on and talk about this topic or that topic or debate about this one or that one? So the idea is that what his brand became was this: I have the ability to talk about science to all different kinds of audiences, and I can customize how I talk about it to all different audiences.
Mhm.
So what makes him the person that people turn to is that ability to do that. So he has a very specific brand, and he manufactured that brand not again out of being fake, but out of the idea of how do I manufacture and create something so that I get known in this way as a science translator. So when we look at this, a lot of people will say, yeah, but Bill Nye is Bill Nye. How the heck is this going to work for me? And, Bill Nye has something special. I don't want to have a national presence. I just want to get good opportunities to work at places that I want or whatever it might be. So the question is, can this work for you? If we look at the core principles, can this help us get to the top of a job search for companies or organizations who are interested in working? Or can it help me get clients? Can it help me stand out? And we'll start digging into that. So when we start looking at this, the steps that I'm going to walk you through will show that Bill Nye is not unique. So I've been teaching personal branding to college students, professionals in all different industries, from the NFL to the pharmaceutical industry and everywhere in between. And the reason that I like doing this is if you start to understand that this can be done in a very effective way, a very authentic way, a very real way, it allows you to have impact in ways that you may not have imagined. And for me, that's where this gets to be fun, because I don't really care about the marketing part. What I care about is helping people find and connect with work that's meaningful to them, and being able to, feel fulfilled and do their best work for the greater good of everyone else. So the example that I'm going to use here is one of my graduate students, and her name was Erin Podolak. Erin's awesome person. She walks into my class, my social media marketing class, where there's a heavy personal branding component. She comes in the first day and she says, Don, and I didn't know her at all. She said, Don, I'm here because my advisors told me I should be here, but I think this is BS. I think that marketing and branding is all pretty much smoke and mirrors, and it's about deceiving people. And this doesn't apply to people in the science industry. And I literally said, Erin, it's great to meet you. Held out my hand and said, great to meet you. And I said, I really appreciate you being straightforward with me. I love that. I said, so what's your story? And she said, well, I'm a science writer. I'm getting ready to graduate from my master's program, and I have zero job prospects. And I'm pretty freaked out about that. I really want to be a science writer, but I don't think it's feasible. And I'm here. And I said, Erin, it's awesome. Thank you for being honest. Thank you for being open. Tell you what, you are welcome in this class as long as for the first 2 to 3 weeks, you do everything I say. If you do that and you find it is not working, drop. Totally understand it is not worth your time and energy. But if you do everything that I say and it's starting to work, I want you to say, okay, I'll stick this out. Is that cool? And we kind of a side conversation. She said, okay. But again, I think this is BS. So this is Erin. And again, her story was, I'm getting ready to graduate. I have no job prospects, no job offers. She graduated from an Ivy League school, finishing her master's degree at one of the top public universities in the world. And she's like, oh my God, I don't know what to do.
Hey, Don,
So
I want to interrupt you. So in this class, there probably are people watching this right now that are Erin's, except instead of being in the sciences, they're in engineering in the BSE program. And maybe they want to go, I've had students that have said like, branding is not for me. I want to go work for SpaceX, or I want to work for John Deere and travel around the country. So like, I've got a bunch of students in our department that are just like Erin. So this is spot on.
Yeah. And you can use this to get noticed and recognized by those companies. And so one of the things that I told Erin was, okay, here's what we're going to do. And it's what I'm going to walk you through. Now, you go along with the strategy. I said, Aaron, what's your number one goal at this point in time? Like, if you could say this class was a success for you, forget the letter grades and everything, what would success look like? And she said, the number one goal would be for me to make connections with people who work at Scientific American, because that's like the gold standard.
Yeah.
And for me, it was like, man, that's awesome. Go big or go home, right? That's like saying, hey, I want to play sports. Hey, I want to be in the NBA, or I want to be in the
Right.
Olympics. This is a big deal. So I said, okay, so it's going to take some work, but again, if you follow the process, so let's start identifying people who work at Scientific American. Let's look at who are the accounts and the people who engage with Scientific American content, and let's start following them, and let's start seeing, are there opportunities for you to get involved? And so Erin started following the process, and she started following the plan. And after about 3 weeks, she goes, Don, come here, pulls me over to her desk. And we start out with Twitter, because Twitter is the easiest one to make interactions with, the least invasive as far as making connections and following. And she goes, look, somebody from Scientific American responded to one of my tweets and they liked it. Oh my gosh, how cool is that? Kid you not, the next week, Don, come here. Look at somebody from Scientific American is continuing to interact with me, and now they're following me. Mm-hmm. A week later, Don, come here. Look, Scientific American put me on a list of people to follow, Twitter list of people to follow. And the week after that, pulls me over, and I'm like, Aaron, I can't handle this. Every week you call me over to your desk, it's like incredible news. What's going on this week? And she said, well, Scientific American decided that what they were going to do is they were going to do a story on 5 young and up and coming science writers worldwide to pay attention to. And using her blog as one of her strategies, guess who got listed on Scientific American's website as one of 5 young and up and coming science writers worldwide to follow? Mm-hmm. Worldwide. So what changed? Well, she had been blogging, and what she had been blogging about and creating content, it doesn't have to be blogging, but it's creating some content. She had a blog, and her blog was not heavily followed. Her blog was followed by pretty much one main person, and most people will guess, well, it's her mom, which is exactly right. But it was a little bit unique because her mom was a kindergarten teacher, and so her kindergarten students would submit questions to her and say, can you ask Miss Erin why the sky is blue? Or why do rainbows form? Or why do narwhals have those big things and look like unicorns? Yeah. And she would answer them in blog post format. So what happened is, as she started creating content, Scientific American people, and started sharing content, Scientific American people started looking at her profile. They started doing searches for her, and they found, wow, she's pretty interesting. Oh, she's pretty good. Oh, she's understanding how to communicate and reach out. And suddenly they're like, this woman is a fantastic communicator. Now, nothing changed. She wasn't creating brand new content. Mm-hmm. All she did was she got on the radar of people who had influence. And because she had started building a brand to some degree by having a blog, then once she got more strategic, she was able to use what she learned in my class to get in front of the right people, stuff that I'm going to show you in a little bit. And that allowed her to get this publicity. She ended up having Scientific American say, Aaron, we're pretty impressed with what you're doing, and we're not very good at science communication. And we have a panel of experts, a conference coming up in Finland, and we're looking at having this event, and we're wondering if we paid all of your expenses, would you be willing to come to Finland and talk about why scientists need to understand how to communicate effectively? Yeah. So again, no job prospects. And this is literally like in 6 weeks. She ends up getting 3 job offers, and she's still at the job she took at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, ended up getting an opportunity to speak at different conferences on behalf of Scientific American. And, it created opportunity by her getting known to be able to do things and to feel a level of comfort of knowing there was jobs waiting for her. And she got to pick the job that she felt was the best fit for her. So again, we'll dig into some of the tactics of this, but this is an example. I have tons of examples from my classes. Here's an example of a law student. So somebody who's, again, in a field that's social media and personal branding and digital marketing don't work there. And this was a message that she sent me that, hey, because I took your class as a first year law student, I got recognized for the skill set I brought in being able to communicate, and the ability to communicate with audiences inside of companies, whether you're at a big company like John Deere or outside, if you're at a smaller company like Block Imaging, which has engineers that do refurbished MRI equipment. What it did is it gave her opportunities to stand out and start making connections. So as she said here, it's opened doors to opportunities typically not available to first year law students, because most of these law students don't have the same training. And then as one of the cool things is I'm getting to work in my hometown of Manitowoc, and I'm on a panel of working with people of 2 CEOs and some executive directors, not something a 22-year-old normally gets to do. So these are the types of things that we look for. We don't look for national publicity necessarily like a Bill Nye. And if you want to do that, great, but that's not the goal of what getting known and doing the branding is about.
Can I just, so I'm picturing myself sitting out there either at home or at school watching this, and people say, well, yeah, but Bill Nye's got really cool, he's got this thing out in space right now that's using solar particles, and you've got Aaron who's able to talk about why the sky is blue, and you got Kelly talking about legal issues, and it looks like some of the Manitowoc Netflix. But our students, right, like there's so many different cool things happening in food, agriculture, and the environment, and climate change. And so I'd actually argue that you've got more than some.
I would 100% agree. Now, here's the thing that you have to remember, and this is the biggest downside to being a student at a place like the UW-Madison that has such high standards. You assume because you're sitting in a classroom with other peers who've been able to make it into the university and then succeed at the university at a level that they've been able to stay in, that everybody knows what you know. Mm-hmm. So that's just simply not true. We're in a small insulated bubble where most people have no idea how different things work. And so the idea is you're not writing for your peers, or you're not doing videos for your peers. You're doing them for others who might not understand this. So again, it might be maybe all of your content is for companies to just demonstrate what you learned and what you know to make you a good candidate. One of the most fun things that a lot of my students do is I say, okay, right now you're a junior or senior at a world-class university. Imagine if you were a senior in high school and you were interested in the engineering arenas that you're interested in. And this senior from the UW-Madison started creating content for you to learn about what classes to take, what's interesting, what's new, what's happening, all different kinds of things about your field. What would you have done? You would have been over the moon that this person was mentoring a senior in high school. Well, that's who you can create content for. You can create content for engineering science teachers, and high schools and middle schools, for kids who are looking at careers and just think about what would I have wanted to know, and what again, classes to take, exciting experiments, things you can do at home, books you like to read, podcasts you like to follow. There's so much. I could not agree more that you have more, especially with all of the important issues that we cover and you guys cover with food and agriculture and health and climate and space. I mean, you can, and all you need is an audience of one, like what happened with Aaron. You get the right person at Scientific American paying attention to you. Boom. You've got that. So again, I think that the easiest way for my students in all my years of teaching this has been to think of yourself as a senior in high school, and you're taking what you know now to help them. So share tips, tricks, exciting things that you're finding, things you're geeking out on, questions you have, and how you're trying to find the answers to those, and share the journey of trying to discover, how do you do this? Failed experiments. People love failed experiments because it shows we're all human and we don't always know everything. And science is a lot about figuring things out and being willing to
take risks,
fail and learn. Exactly. Elon Musk's SpaceX, coming down and crashing and blowing up the other day. If you looked at his tweet afterwards, he's like, this is so exciting, and whether or not, I thought that was brilliant. He's like, no, this isn't a huge setback. This is an opportunity to grow. So again, it's something that, as you say, that your students have a lot, anybody watching this, you have a lot of opportunity to do some really, really cool stuff.
My other class that I teach is the senior design class. That's a capstone class. And I remember pretty distinctly, I had 4 students that I assigned to a project last year, and it was on aseptic liquid transfer at low temperatures in a laboratory environment. And I know that there were two of the students that's like that was not in their top. But guess what? Right now, as we're shipping vaccines for coronavirus around the country, that type of technology is it's going to save the world, literally. And so
Absolutely.
anything that we're doing in engineering can really make a difference.
100%. And that's one of the things I really like is what I push my students. So I have about 80 students in my class every semester from literally every field across campus. So I love it because I'm learning stuff I have no idea about. And I'm like, yeah, as my students are getting prepared to create content, I'm like, remember, yeah, I teach at the university. I've been here a long time, won a bunch of teaching hours, but I know nothing about your field. I'm a newbie. Help me understand the basics. Why are you geeked about this? Why do you love this? Why is it fun? Why is it relevant to my day to day? Because I might not see that connection the way you do. And those are all really valuable pieces of content that can help somebody see, again, what's your ability to translate your passion? What's your drive? Why are you interested? Would you be a good fit? Are you self-motivated? But then also, can you take complex information and translate it in a way that's meaningful? How does what you were just talking about relate to the COVID vaccine coming out?
Yeah.
You could tell through a series of videos or articles or whatever what that story is and why we should care. And so those types of things are invaluable to help people understand and see what your passion is, but also your ability to translate. And we need that more than ever with all the misinformation that's out there, being able to help people understand what is, and it doesn't need to be anything negative. It's just people are less trusting. So it could just be, some simple facts about things. It doesn't have to be controversial either, but just helping people understand who are in your audience it's a lot of fun too, to see people get it and get inspired by you.
Mhm.
So when we look at this, what the commonalities of the case studies of these two examples are, and I'll share one more in a little bit, is what they did is they started thinking about what can I do to proactively let people find me online? Because we do know from research that one of the number one ways human resource departments and graduate schools look for whether or not somebody is a qualified candidate is they will Google your name. And what they find has a big impact on whether or not they will consider you as a candidate. And as I like to tell my students, imagine there's two engineering students who are interested in how to help operationalize and keep equipment in large food places safe from COVID. And one of the applicants has what their application has, just their Y paper, their resume, and their CV. Another has those same things and has pretty equal qualification, but their name comes up in a Google search because they have a website that shares some insights and information about the field. And they have some YouTube videos or a Facebook page or a LinkedIn page or an Instagram page where they talk about the things that are relevant to them. If you're the person trying to decide who to hire, you're going to spend more time reviewing the content of the person who's created more content, which gives that person more time in the virtual interview. Even before they meet you, they're spending more time than with the other person. They're spending more time with you. And I have yet to have that not be advantageous for a student in all the years that I've taught this class. So taking that time and being thoughtful and proactive is really key. So thinking about too, how can I help somebody know I'm a good candidate? What can I show them? What would they want to know? And then also, what would I want to share that's interesting and fun, that makes me excited about this field? And all it has to be is exciting and fun to who your core audience is. So it could be totally irrelevant and boring to me, but if it's your core audience and they love it, like the refurbished MRI company, I can talk about them forever. You've got engineers talking about how to repair C-arm equipment. Who cares about that? I don't. Well, who cares is people who are looking to purchase refurbished MRI equipment, and they want to know, what do I need to know to make sure I'm getting a good purchase, that things are going to work, that how things are going to function, and that they're going to meet all the needs. That's who you care about. So you don't need big traffic. You just need the right traffic.
What I hear you saying is that the technical stuff is really important, and you can geek out about the technical stuff, but you also need to show how does that have value to society, or to a high school kid, or to your parents, or like
Yep.
you need to think about what is the value of this thing that you're most excited about.
Yeah. And so like, for example, with the John Deere company, I might do a couple of videos or a couple of articles about why I love ag and why I love companies like John Deere and what cool things they are doing. Because what that shows is I'm taking the time to research John Deere. I'm taking the time to share case studies about what I like about what they're doing, why I think they're a good fit. So it can be, again, a really narrow fit. It doesn't have to be 100,000 people looking at it. It can literally be 10 people looking at it. But if it's the 10 right people, that gives you a massive opportunity.
Is it fair to say that you also show that there's some kind of an alignment in your personal values with company values?
100%. And when you talk about that 13 months is the average length of stay, one of the reasons young people in their 20s will leave those companies is they don't feel like there's good cultural fit.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I thought this company would be cool, but now it's not. So that's where if you do some content about companies you'd like to work for, or just do case studies, don't say I want to necessarily work for you, but say, I'm going to be doing a series of short videos or short articles about 3 companies in the food engineering space that I really like. And I'm going to explain why I like what they're doing. And let those be 3 companies you're interested in applying for. Sometimes as you're doing the research, you're going to find out, yeah, the company's cool, but not for me. But other times you'll find, yeah, they really are a good fit. When those companies go to read your stuff or see your videos and see that you've talked about them, what is that going to do? It's going to make them feel good. Hey, this kid took the time to look at, this stuff. This young person took the time to reflect on what they like.
Yeah.
That's really cool. They're doing their due diligence. They're just not sending out an application. They're being proactive about researching who they would want to work for. That's the kind of person we want. That's the kind of getter spirit and attitude we want. So it really is massively beneficial on a lot of layers. And I literally have hundreds of case studies that I could share with you. So I could geek out on this forever, but it definitely works. So when we think about this, what we need to do is we need to think like our audience. So as I'm mentioning, if I want to apply to John Deere, what would hiring people at John Deere would want to know? If I'm looking at SpaceX or NASA, or I'm looking at Cargill, or I'm looking at whatever, what would they want to or need to know about me? And how can I demonstrate that I have the skills and abilities to meet that, or I'm willing to develop those skills and abilities to do that? And so when you start thinking about this, and I mentioned this before, when you think of HR people who are in positions to hire, their lives are really, really stressful. I have yet to meet one HR person who's like, it's easy, no big deal. They're always stressed. So if we can make their job search easier, the ability to fill, a position, to candidate search easier, the better it is going to be for us, because we're going to stand out and we're going to be like, oh, they made our job easier. I have a former student who works in HR for Amazon, and she talks about this all the time when she joins my class. The more you can do to help them, the more you're going to stand out, the more likely it is you're going to make each round of cuts. So thinking about that and keeping in mind why social media, I literally wish we didn't have it sometimes, because, we need to disconnect and it's hard to disconnect, but 84% of hiring managers, this is across every industry, say that they use social media as a part of their hiring strategy. So they'll search and look for you. Some people will say, yeah, but what if I don't have anything? Then I don't have to worry. It's like, true, but what if you have a peer who does have good social media accounts that show themselves professionally? What they're going to do is they're going to stand out, like I mentioned before. So it behooves us to not be passive, to be proactive.
Yeah, in my former role, when I was in administration, I hired a lot of people, or was involved in processes. And you have about 50% of the times when you're hiring people, and everybody kind of looks the same. There might be a little bit of differentiation, but then the other 50%, you'll have one person. It's just head and like it's so obvious. And the problem is you're also, for that one person that's head and shoulders above everybody else, you're competing with a bunch of other people who also see that. But the thing is, you've got to be able to see it. You've got to be able to make yourself that person who is the standout. And this is a tool to do it.
And the cool thing about this too, and I can't go into it too deep because of time, but I've had a lot of students who've gotten good jobs because they continued using their social. They've gotten headhunted and have gotten opportunities for even better jobs where they either came back and said, hey, company B just reached out to me. I really love working here. And they offered me 20,000 more a year. Is there any chance we can figure something out? And they've gotten raises, or they've been able to to change positions. So there's a lot of ongoing benefit that I completely agree with that. So what can I share with you in terms of what I've done with literally thousands of people, students? I forget how many students I've had now over the years. It's been over 1,000 just at UW, but again, I consult outside of UW, have done that for years. So what's kind of the key components? Let's get to the meat of the matter, so to speak. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through the 3-step roadmap, super simple, not easy, but simple, that if you take the time to execute on it, you are going to see benefits and results. So the first thing is you want to clearly define who you are and how you want to present yourself professionally. So what's my goal? Is it to get into a particular set of graduate schools? Is it to get hired by a particular type of company? Is it to get a particular type of position in companies? And it could be even geographically located. Now it's a little bit different because of COVID, but I've had students like, hey, I'm going to specifically market to try to get a job as an occupational therapist or a physical therapist in Southern California because I want to move there. Well, you can do that. How do you niche your audience? So letting the right people know that you're creating content for them. And then what is that you should be creating? Because you have a lot on your plate to begin with. And now, great, I got to think of creating content. How do I do that in a way that's not an extra ask? Or if it's an extra ask, it's something that provides value back to me, so that ask is worth it.
You did say this to a certain extent, but all three of these are super important. You can't just say, well, I'm going to pick where I want to work. You've got to work the three legs of the stool sort of equally.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the first is define your goal and thinking about what it is you want to do and what it is you bring to the table. So I'll often use things like a DISC analysis. Some people will use things like Myers-Briggs or 16 personality, just getting a little familiar with who you are. You don't need to be super extroverted. You can be introverted. You can be who you are, but figuring out who you are and how you can then present that to your audience in a way that shows that you would be a benefit to them is really that first step. So figuring out where you are and then thinking about, again, what do I want to do? In Erin's case, she wanted to get recognized by literally one of the top 2 or 3 science communication organizations in the world as far as public views of science communication. So she had to really figure out, again, what do I bring to the table? But then that's her goal. Her goal is to get recognized by Scientific American. We had to figure out what's the work that it's going to take and what's the process, because you do have to put in an effort with it. So you think of it like the 3-legged stool that you were just giving the analogy. And one of my mentors taught me this. And the idea is that without 3 legs, a stool can't stand. You can have 2 legs, and no matter how firm everything else is, if you only have 2 legs, this thing is going to collapse. So you do need all 3 tools. It's a little bit different. I've been studying Ikigai, which is a Japanese component of this, which is really, really cool. I can share that with you as well. Ikigai is a way of combining these. It has 4 elements rather than 3. But the first, in terms of being honest with yourself, is what are your skills and abilities? What are you good at? What background experiences do you have, and what vocational skills? And when you're looking at this, look at the quote unquote soft skills, which I hate that term because the soft skills end up being the most important in a lot of cases. Do you work well with other people? Are you a good fit? Even if you're the smartest person in the world, if you're a jerk, companies aren't going to want to hire you. So what are some soft skills? What have you done extracurricular wise? Start demonstrating both academically and non-academically what you bring to the table. Next is to start looking at what do you care about and what do you value? So what are some things that are important to you in work? Working as part of a team, working alone, working for a company that is trying to explore the frontiers of space, working for a company that's trying to bring vaccines to people quicker, working with an MRI refurbished company because you want to help diagnose people's cancers earlier and you want to, help prevent that. Or you just want to create cool new things. And so you're working with a company that's just like all about fun and innovation. Doesn't matter what it is, but getting real with yourself will allow you to talk about and share some of that, so that when you're applying for jobs or you're creating your brand, what you start to do is you start to share what it is that you get excited about. And then last is the economic model. And so you have to have people who are willing to pay for what you want. So for example, I love doing jujitsu. I'm pretty decent at it. It fulfills me, but nobody's going to pay me because I'm not good enough to get paid to do it. So that's where too you have to look at, and this is actually how I started my side hustle, which is a lot of students now want to know about. How can I start a side gig? The things I can do on the side with me and my buddies. We can start a company. You know, she and me and a couple of other people. We want to create something. Is to start thinking about what are the places that people will pay for you to work on. Like one of my students this past semester is in engineering, and he works on drag racing cars, and he totally geeks out about that. And so, you know, what can he do? Is there an economic model? Then he found some opportunities by doing some research where you could create videos talking about stuff to start getting recognized and noticed, and then use that as a way to start getting an internship with one of the top companies. I don't remember the company's name because I'm not a drag racer, believe it or not. But it created opportunity for him. So first, what are you good at? Second, what do you care about? And third, will people pay you to do it? So what this does when you start to create content of like this type, what it does is when people are doing those Google searches, social media searches, is they start to get to know you and meet you beforehand. So when they see and hear video of you, or they read stuff on you, if you get a job interview, guess what? They're going to feel like they know you. And that's a huge advantage. I call it the Oprah effect, where a lot of people will feel like fans of Oprah Winfrey, if they saw her walk into a room, they would like walk up to her and give her a big hug and say, Oprah, you're the best. But Oprah's never met them and they've never met Oprah. And I'll ask people, why would you go up to a complete stranger and do that? And like, Oprah's not a stranger. I'm like, but have you ever met her in person? Of course not. Has she ever met you? No. Then she's a stranger. Like, no. But because we've read her stuff and we've seen her on TV, we know her. And again, we don't have to be known at the Oprah level, but I have seen that time again when I walk into consultations and they're determining whether or not they might hire me as a consultant, where they're like, oh yeah, I loved your video about this. And they're so much more relaxed because they've taken the time. I've taken the time to create that content. You can do the ssame thing for a job interview. Or graduate.
I have had that happen even just from my website. You know, I'll put up articles and there have been times in the last 10 or 12 years I've interviewed for jobs, and people like, I'll sit down and like, whoa, you guys know so much about me. And it is because of my web plus my social media presence.
Yeah.
So you've got to put stuff out that's of value, but when you do, people really do notice.
And again, of value, it doesn't mean you can just share what you're learning. You don't have to say I'm the smartest at this, because the biggest issue I run into, even with my PhD students, is a lack of confidence. And it's, who am I to be putting out content? It's imposter syndrome. And it's like, you do not have to put out that you're an expert. Actually, Oprah was an expert at nothing except being real. She would interview other people and share their information. And then she was real about her own struggles, which endeared her. So you don't have to say, I'm the smartest person. You can say, hey, for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be building this little drag race model car and I'm going to be testing it out. And we're going to see what happens. So here's what I'm doing. Here's step one. Then another piece of content, step two. So it can just be that exploring and showing, again, your passion and your interest.
And Don, just in case there's any students who are still skeptical. So I had a student in my design class 2 or maybe 3 years ago. I'll just say his first name was Jack. And he was interested in stock car racing. It was his passion. It was his hobby. I don't know the whole story. I'm guessing maybe he'd done some traveling into the South and watched stock car races. And like, there was some point in his career in college where it clicked. It's like, that's what I want to do. And he started doing, I don't know the degree to which he followed this roadmap precisely, but I was on LinkedIn with him the other day. He reached out. It had been my birthday. I got a happy birthday from him. And guess what? He is a chief engineer for a big racing company in NASCAR racing.
That is awesome. And that's a perfect example. Again, you know, it's, and you use it to the degree that it helps you, you know, to get to where you want. And that's what's really cool, is it opens up opportunities that when you're thoughtful too, you get better at applying to companies and organizations and in industries that you're really interested in. So when you go on a job interview, and I can say this, and I bet you can as well, when you sit in a job interview and you're interviewing somebody, you can tell the person who's looking for a job versus the person who wants to work for your company or with your organization. And head and shoulders, that person will stand out. So that's where, you know, again, maybe you research NASCAR and you're like, it's cool, but not for me. That's really good, because then when you apply to other places, you'll be more confident about why you want to work there. Sometimes, again, you'll discover, no, this is the exact right place for me. And that's where it just gets fun, because you go in with a level of confidence and knowledge and being known by the people who are working with the company or the organization, that you have such a huge advantage over everybody else. Because I guarantee you 90%, at least 95% of college students that I have worked with, probably actually closer to 98 or 99, don't do this.
Yeah.
They just wait to, oh, I'm going to get a job. And it's like, nope.
But a lot of what you're talking about as well, whether it's Aaron Podolak or Bill Nye the Science Guy, isn't a big part of it. Don't you kind of call that enthusiasm?
Absolutely, 100%. And there was a study, I was actually just quoted in a book that's about to be published next month. And my section in this book, it's about personal branding, is how, I believe the study was at Yale, that they did a study of human resource professionals. And they said, what's the number one most important attribute when you hire somebody to determine whether or not that person is going to be a successful hire? And it wasn't degree, it wasn't GPA, it wasn't awards, it wasn't what college they went to. It was whether or not the person was enthusiastic about the company and the position. Number one. And so again, you take that time and you do that due diligence and you do that research. And Erin did that, where she said, here's why Scientific American is such a great place to follow. And here are 5 science writers at Scientific American I really love. When she started doing that, oh my gosh, they jumped all over it. And they're like, wow, she knows us. She really knows us, And so it provides an advantage that allows you to show that enthusiasm in a way that other people who don't do it they totally miss out on it. It's so easy to do, but so many people miss out on it. So the next step is to know who you're trying to connect with. So this is where you start to look for what are some of the organizations you might want to work for, graduate schools you might want to go to, etc. And so what you do then is you go to the Google, the source of all light, truth, knowledge, or you go to LinkedIn, or you go to social media and you start researching people who work at John Deere. What I would do is people who work at John Deere who are UW-Madison graduates. LinkedIn, I can do that. And I can start to find from the alumni database, or the database there I can start making connections there. And I can say, hey, I'm doing a couple of articles and I'm putting together a website. I'd like to interview you about what you do at John Deere and what you like about it. Could we do an informational interview? I've had a lot of people who are especially Badger grads say, sure, okay. And now guess what? I have a contact in that organization. So start thinking about, and then you can say, what do you like about it? Off the record, what don't you like? What are some things that you wish you would have known when you were applying? And you can start to get some really good insider information. That's one of the big benefits about being a Badger grad, is we look out for each other. So anyways, having a clear idea of who you want to stand out and who do you want to target. So like one of the examples I'm going to show is a nuclear physicist who took my class 2 years ago. And she didn't think there were many people on social media studying nuclear physics and talking about nuclear physics and nuclear physics as a part of renewable energy. We did a couple of searches on Twitter to start, and did a Google search of who is studying or who is talking about nuclear engineering on social media. And we got a big list. So that's how we did our research. And then what we started to do is we started to identify companies and individuals who were active on Twitter. And then we started following them to see if they would be good to follow and interact with. Then we also found hashtags and groups that existed that made it really beneficial to start to find meaningful targets. This is no different than going to, let's say there's a job fair at the Kohl Center. If you do your due diligence, you would research some of the companies ahead of time. So you'd say, I want to make sure to stop at that booth and that booth and that booth at those companies. Yeah, if I bump into another booth, that might be kind of cool, but I want to make sure I talk to these 3 companies. It's exactly the same, except now it's scalable at a level that is unprecedented. And we get to get remembered and known because people at those companies can then start following us and check us out. And then, as I mentioned here, it's okay to change your target. So as you learn more, I think of it like finding close friends or dating that, sometimes you find out, hey, they're a nice person, but they're not a good fit. And that's cool. So don't be afraid as you go along to have the confidence to say, just like a company might not want to hire you, you can find out that a company's not a good fit for you and say, hey, I wish you well, but I'm not going to put my time and energy in there. Because I guarantee you there's companies that you guys can all provide benefit to, or graduate programs you can all provide benefit to. And the more thoughtful you are about that, the more confident you'll be that you're applying to the right places. And to me, that confidence comes across in the interviews. Absolutely. Yeah. So we are, you got my screen just to make sure we're all good.
We're good.
All
Yeah.
right. So basically what we want to do to pick up where we were is we want to start thinking about the idea of how we can start to find people we want to connect with. And then what do we do to make those connections? So the simple strategies for the connections are simply doing Google searches and doing Google searches for top people to follow in my industry, whatever blank industry is. If you don't get good search results, all you do is you modify that. Top accounts to follow, or biggest thought leaders in my field, or biggest thought leaders at this particular company if I'm looking at working at a particular company. And then doing the same thing in social media. When you're looking at social media, the differences though are to look for hashtags or look for groups depending on the social network. And that's going to be pretty common when you look at things like LinkedIn as far as some of the groups. And then also when you look at Twitter as far as hashtags. And then also just following people, listening in. When I ask people, why is Facebook worth $785 billion at the current moment? It's because they have the ability to follow and listen and track. That's all they're able to do. And then they can analyze that data. Well, we can do the same thing. So spend some time following organizations and industries where we're interested in working, where we might be interested in learning from and continuing to grow, whether it's podcasts, video casts, whatever. And again, start to look for connections. One of the quick tips that I mentioned is, like, let's say, for example, I wanted to work at John Deere and I follow John Deere, and I'm going to just pick Twitter for this case. But I'm going to look to see who is John Deere following. I've mentioned that before, but that's gold because that tells me who they see as a value to follow. And that gives me some insights into their thought process. Who do they see as a value? So if I can make connections with those people, maybe I can't connect with John Deere right away, but if I can make connections with those people, I might be able to get a connection point inside of John Deere. Or I might be able to meet somebody who used to work there who can give me some tips and insights in terms of how to best approach them to be able to land the position that I want. And then when it comes to, step number three, sorry about that. Step number three, what we want to do is we want to be proactive and start producing content. Now, this can be a big ask. I don't know about you, but not many of us, especially in this time of COVID, want to sit down and spend more time on a device, right? But if you think of this as what I'm going to do every day is I'm going to spend a little bit of time, 10, 15, 30 minutes. It can be as little as 10. And I'm going to thoughtfully start building out what I want to do in my future. So I'm not spending time on social media to spend time on social media. What I'm doing is I'm investing in what I'm going to be doing when I finish my degree. And so if you approach it that way and you frame it that way, like when I work with my clients, the biggest complaint by far, and the biggest legitimate complaint is I don't have time. So what I say is, if you envision this as social media to promote yourself, you're not going to find time. If you think of this as knowing that about 80% of people make their decisions about what to do as far as next steps by first researching and gathering information online, whether it's buying a product and doing research about the product or doing research about a potential candidate for an internship or a job. If you realize that, then, and the data clearly shows that, I can share geeky studies on that shows that. But if I know that 80% of the initial introduction and decision is going to be made by somebody doing research online, if I take time to put content online, what that means is that content is an employee of mine. So like I say to my clients, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that content is an employee. Don't think of it as promote. Think of it as that's the first point of contact. And then when you approach it that way, how would you want your first employee to greet a customer when they come in? Think of it the same way. It's a little bit different here, but what would you want? How would you want to greet people when they first meet you if they're potentially going to hire you for a job? What is that introduction you'd want to make? And that's the 24-hour a day, 7-day a week benefit we can get by starting to create content. So when we shift our mindset and look at it as that investment rather than, oh, what do I need to do? I can't think of anything. When we think of what would I want to know if I was an employer? What would I want to know if I was a graduate school? And what can I do to help them out? That's when you can start to change that mindset. And it sounds simple and it sounds subtle, but it really, really works.
So that's just such a difference with digital media, the internet, social media. I love what you're talking about. You've got something working for you,
Correct.
generating value, connecting with people. You still need to be there. Your mind still needs to be in the game, and you need to be accessible when that person connects with your content and reaches out. You want to be there to answer the questions. But I
Absolutely.
love
So
the
like one of the simple strategies that we'll talk about in just a second is if you get involved on Twitter, and there's a lot of scientists on Twitter, a lot of engineers on Twitter, a lot of businesses and organizations on Twitter. So even if it's not your favorite, as I always say to people, when people are like, well, Twitter didn't work for me, I'm like, that's awesome. You're a sample size of 1 out of 8 billion people on the planet, right? You have to think about scale, and you have to think about how other people use it. But if you just start retweeting and sharing out other people's content that you have found helpful, what that starts to do is that starts to show somebody who looks at your feed, what is it that you're looking at? What is it that you're researching? How are you determining what's good content? And that shows your ability to be analytical, to be thoughtful, to be motivated to continue to learn. As simple and subtle as that sounds, it's an invaluable technique, and it doesn't take very much time. You can definitely do that in 10 minutes a day.
Don, I do have a question, and it kind of goes back to the simple strategy slide. And that is, as you sit down and you start to Google people and you're looking at their hashtags and you try to figure out, it's kind of like you're putting puzzle pieces together, which is another way of saying doing research. But if you're going
Correct.
to sit down and work on this, say on a Sunday afternoon for a couple of hours, how do you avoid that trap of like going down rabbit holes and like, because you've done this, I'm sure, like you're going to search for the CEO of John Deere and figure out what are their hobbies, and suddenly you're off in left field, and it
Yeah.
could be any number of things. How do you make sure you do the best job to capture your time and leverage it?
I use a Pomodoro timer on my both my phone and my laptop, and it's set for 25 minutes. And
Mhm.
it goes off in 25 minutes. So I have some level of ADD, so short but intense attention span. So I play to that. I know I'm not going to be able to concentrate for 2 hours straight. It's not in my personality. I can try to set myself down, and it's hard. So I do 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off, 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off. And when I do it like that, I still get distracted during it, but I'm able to say, okay, I only have 15 more minutes versus I've got 3 more hours to get
Yeah,
through this. Oh my gosh.
because otherwise it
So
could become endless. Just the
absolutely.
other thing that I do if I'm sitting down to search for something that might seem more fun, because I'm using Facebook or Twitter, I actually write down like, okay, what am I going to try to get at right now in this next 25-minute period? What
Great idea.
specifically? Yeah.
Yeah, intentionality is huge. And when you keep it, I have sticky notes all over my computer of little phrases to remind myself and to say, like one of them is, this is practice, this is play. And what that means is that nothing I do is going to be that earth shattering. It's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to learn. And so by the same token, saying and putting the intentionality, what that does is that allows me to focus on learning rather than doing things quote unquote right. And yes, of course, I want to do things correctly, but I also need to be learning. But putting it as, for 25 minutes, my intention is to start to expand my professional sphere so I can have opportunities that I get to choose the job I want rather than scrambling for a job. And just posting a sticky note like that, if that helps you like it does me, because my mind will track in different ways.
Mhm.
And those are little visual reminders. I also have alerts that go off on my phone a couple times a day that are like, okay, what are you working on right now important?
Focus. Yeah.
Just yeah. So that's what works for me. Everybody's obviously different, but to avoid that rabbit hole, that's the 25-minute timer on. There's a ton of different apps you can use. I have music that goes for 25 minutes. So when that music ends, also I know, okay, I can take a break now. The biggest challenge for me with that is coming back and keeping my breaks at 5 minutes. So there's some discipline involved, but it's like, you work at stuff, you grow, you are imperfect, but you get better at it over time.
Right. Always a work in progress.
Exactly. So, and then why should you share online? We talked a little bit about this already, because the reason is this statistic. So this is called one of the 99-1 rule of the internet, as I think is what it's called. And what it says is 90% of people who are online only lurk. They will never, ever, ever post anything. So a lot of times you might be posting stuff and you might not think people are paying attention, but I guarantee you there are people paying attention that you don't realize are paying attention. And that's the majority of people. 9% of people on average will interact with content. And what that means is that they'll like, they'll comment, they might share, they might do something like that, but they'll just interact. And only 1% of people on the internet will actually create content. And so that can be retweeting with a comment, that can be doing a review of a book or a podcast or a product or a class. But what that means is if you're in that 1%, you're standing out from 99% of other people. So you have a significant advantage when it comes to what we had talked about in the previous recording and this one. HR people start their job searches or their reviews by doing a Google search once they think you might be, candidate. And if you're creating, you're now in that 1% category, and that is a significant advantage. And you don't have to be sharing anything earth-shattering. One of the best things to do is to share reviews of favorite books, favorite classes, favorite thought leaders, and that's all you do. I know a gentleman who's literally a 10-figure a year earner before the decimal points, and all he does is curates people's content, their videos, and tells you what the top 10 takeaways he had from their content. It's all he does. And he makes, Evan Carmichael is his name. So, you don't need to do anything like super earth shattering, but you do need to be proactive, because what that shows is that you have the drive to be self-motivated. That shows you have the drive to be analytical and to think about things and to provide thought, and you have the confidence to at least discuss things. And so again, hugely, hugely valuable and impactful. So then the question again becomes, what should you share online? And some of that we've talked about already, but one of my buddies is a gentleman named Chris Brogan, who's typically listed as one of the top 50 to 100 social media influencers in the world. And I've got to know him over time. Super amazing guy. And one day when I was just starting out a long time ago, I said, Chris, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. How in the world do you become successful? And how do you end up with New York Times bestselling books? And how do you end up with an audience? And this is Chris. Again, super, super awesome guy. He's got a daily live show that I highly recommend. But he tweeted back or direct messaged me back 2 words. And that was it. So all you have to do is be helpful. Yeah. Know who you're trying to help and be helpful. So if I'm trying to be helpful to HR people, show them things that make it clear I'm a good candidate. If it's to graduate schools, same thing. If it's to an audience where I'm trying to attract some clients or customers, I have to figure out who those people are. It could be me as a senior in high school, as we discussed before, just to demonstrate, like Aaron Podolak did, my ability to decipher knowledge and communicate well. All of those things are super simple. And every one of us, even if we might not think, we might suffer from that imposter syndrome, every one of us, if we focus on being helpful, that imposter syndrome voice of who am I? I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not, starts to go away, because you're not trying to be helpful to the world. You don't worry about looking smart. You worry about being helpful. Mm-hmm. And that totally changes the game. And so you see a lot of this is psychology. It really isn't about tactics necessarily. It's really about stuff that is in how you approach things.
And it's also important for students to note, you're not being manipulative doing this. I mean, if you're genuinely curious about the world, and you may be connected to an HR manager, let's just pick John Deere, you may be connected on social media with the HR manager, or it may be a design engineer who's got a lot of influence in the company. And if you see a press release out of Europe on some new European robotic tractor and you tweet it, or you send it to somebody, people really do pay attention. They want to be connected to that content.
Oh, that's a great point. The way I got my connection. So when it comes to digital marketing influencers, like Forbes magazine, Entrepreneur, and Inc. put out a top 50 list every year. And 4 of those people I can direct message at any moment in time via my phone. And people will say, how the heck did you make those connections? And I always jokingly say, well, don't you know who I am? And they're like, no, I don't. I'm like, exactly. That's my point. The point is, what I did is I shared stuff that I thought, and I'm like, hey, at Chris Brogan, found this and thought it might be helpful to you. Hey, at Marcus Sheridan, found this and thought it would be helpful for you. Wondering if this might, and some of it was just fun, lighthearted stuff. Cause I found out, for example, that Chris liked to do Spartan races. So, and he had struggled with weight. So I would share tips on doing different things for Spartan races. And, he's like, oh, cool. Appreciate it. And some people love dogs. So I'll share funny dog stuff. Sometimes it's serious stuff of, hey, saw this new thing coming up about this Facebook and this antitrust suit against Facebook. You have any thoughts on it? And so I'll reach out and just say, I'd love to hear your perspective because I see you as an expert. And very, very simple to do. And you don't need world-class, top 50 people. So let me qualify that. You just need the right people within a company or within an organization to start building your network. So again, the biggest thing is the big names are totally approachable if you do this. There's 2 things that I recommend you do when it comes to interacting with big names. 1, don't ask, actually 3 things. Don't ask them for anything. Number 1 thing people do is, hey, I love your stuff. And, oh, by the way, can you sign my book? Oh, by the way, can you write the forward to that? People are always asking them for something. So what I do is I just simply message and say, hey, Chris, just wanted to let you know your work is really helping me as I work on my goal of becoming a mechanical engineer working in whatever. And again, I'm making this up. I'm out of my league in terms of language. But I just want to say thank you for what you're doing. It's really helping inspire me and I appreciate you. Period. That's it. Yeah. It is amazing how many people never hear that because everybody's like, well, they're big names. They must hear that all the time. And not at all. The second thing is share things with them that you think would be helpful for them. They don't have eyes everywhere. And just going out of your way to say, hey, Chris, saw this. I've been following you a while. I know that you're into the Spartan races, and I thought this might be something you'd be interested in. Hope all is well.
Yeah.
Period. And Gary Vaynerchuk, who's very, very popular, calls it the jab, 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 right hook technique. And you can do it as you're saying, and you have to do it as the way you're saying in a genuine way. If you're doing it with, I'm just here to extract, people can sniff that a million miles away. So just, maybe someday you'll ask for something, but for now, no, you just appreciate what you're doing. And the number 1 way that I made all of my contacts was I just sent them a message after following them for a while. And what I recommend, and I'll share this in a little bit, is recording a thank you video. And I just go, hey, Chris Brogan, Don Stanley here. You don't know me, but I've been following you for quite a while. And I just want to say your work really is helping me out. You're talking about mental health as well as social media is really, really cool. And in case you don't hear it, just want to know you're making a difference. And I'm grateful for you and everything that you're doing.
Period. That's it. Yeah.
You want an informational interview with them, or you want to do an interview for a blog post that you're going to be writing, game over, because you've taken the time to be thoughtful and helpful. And it's amazing how, if it's, again, even just an HR person in a company or somebody working in a position that you like, doesn't have to, again, be anybody who's known anywhere, but just say, hey, I've been tracking you and following you, and flatter them, in a real way.
Right.
But anyway, that's one of the simplest strategies for starting to get known and get connected. By the way, it works for products as well, just as a side note, because I've done that with a couple of companies, and I'm just like, hey, I love what you're doing as a company. I love your products, and I've gotten lots of free gear that way. Not that that's why I'm doing it, but kind of a nice thing is people, as Maya Angelou said, people won't remember what you said or what you did, but they'll remember how you made it.
I was driving my Ford Focus one time on University Avenue, and I had I'm not going to go through the whole story. I had a fuel pump issue that was literally undiagnosable, and I stalled right in front of the Shell gas station on University Avenue, pulled in, and I used Twitter. I was a little bit fed up with this particular vehicle, and within minutes, Ford direct messaged me and said, give us your phone number. We will have a tow truck and we'll get this taken care of. They towed me to the dealership. They gave me a rental car. they ended up having to like totally take my fuel system apart to fix it. But like, yeah, companies they do listen to their
Oh,
customers, which
absolutely.
is, I consider
Absolutely.
another old lesson here. But
Yeah, and I'm friends with Scott Monty, who was the head of social media for Ford Motor Company, and that was something they prided themselves intensely on was really being proactive listeners. I've got some cool stories about him and campaigns that, but that's probably for another day. But that's a cool example of, here you are in Madison, and you send this message out about being frustrated, and this major corporation
it was
responds.
hot. I was crabby. Like, what am I gonna do? I didn't want to have to spend $100 to have my car towed. But
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah,
we took care of
exactly. And then that becomes that word of mouth. So you get somebody inside the company say, "Hey, you got to check out this John guy. He's pretty interesting.
it. Yeah.
I think he might be a good candidate." And then they talk to somebody else within the company. Now you have an inside connection, and I've seen this happen time and time again. Where that's what happened with Erin as she got bolstered up the step ladder. It's like, do you follow her? Yeah, I've been following her. Have you? Yeah. Well, no, I'm going to start following her. Hey, maybe we should ask her to come to our conference. What do you think she'd be interested? That's how things scale. So yes, I could go on and on and on, obviously, forever about that. So the way that I approach this is, and this is a recommended formula for starters in particular. So I think of this as a job interview, as you see here. So my content formula is like, if I'm going to pick one social network, and it could be any of them, and I usually recommend creating a simple website using something like Wix or Squarespace or something like that, or WordPress. But 70 to 80% of my content I'm going to curate, which just means I want somebody to go and look at my feed. And I'll use Twitter as my reference point from here on out, just as an example, but you can adapt this to everyone. Where I want somebody to go and see my feed and see that 70 to 80% of the time I'm sharing out other content that people are creating and giving them kudos. Hey, if you're looking to learn about this, check out so-and-so's article. Hey, just found this, and this is really interesting. Wondering if anybody has any thoughts on this. Hey, if you're looking for 3 people to follow on Twitter, here's one of the best people in BSE to be following. So that's what I do the majority of the time. 10 to 20% of the time I'll create. So that's where I'll put something together that's more along the original lines of things that I'm thinking about, questions that I have. So I might tweet out, here are 5 questions I'm going to try to answer in my BSE 308 seminar this semester. So throughout the semester, I'm going to work on answering these. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Keep posted, and I'll let you know what I'm learning as I go along.
Yeah.
And then 5.
Let me just tell you one quick example. My most read article in the popular press in 2020, the year of the coronavirus epidemic or pandemic, when it first started, this was at the very end of February and the beginning of March. I got together with another faculty member on campus in the College of Ag and Life Sciences, and I said, we got to write a top 5 article on how COVID could affect the economy and how it could affect farmers and agriculture. And I would say our guesses were they were well educated and well researched, but they were a little speculative. And that crazy thing got picked up literally all over the world. And so people love that kind of content.
Absolutely. And that's where you can say every semester, 5 things I learned from this class I took, 5 things I learned from this class I took. So just use what you're doing in classes, because what that shows is your ability to decipher and condense down what you've learned over the course of the entire semester. And guess what? Most students don't learn this or realize this, and it's no fault of your own, but we're very, very privileged. Not many people get to go to a world-class university, be surrounded by their peers studying stuff that they're interested in. A lot of people don't get that ability to do that, whether it's cultural or money or access. And so when you start sharing some of the things you're learning out in classes, that becomes so invaluable to people to get a peek inside of what it is you're learning, and you get to share some of that. And I think that's cool, that we have an obligation to share out what we're doing to some degree to help people out. And so anyway, that's something that when it comes to creating and saying, here are 5 things I think are going to happen and this is types of articles I do all the time with my clients. I'll be asking them this time of year, usually in October and November. I'll say, what are the 3 to 5 big trends for 2021 coming up for our industry? Then what are the 3 to 5 big innovations that are coming out? Then what are the 3 to 5 big things we learned this year?
Mhm.
Now I've got 3 articles minimum that fit the model of what people love. They love that curated
Yeah,
content.
I love that. It
So,
doesn't have to be five. It also doesn't have to be five. It can be three. I mean, it
it
can
could
be
be one. Yeah.
it could be
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can do it the way that I'll often do it, like with Twitter, is I'll say, I'm going to be doing a series of tweets of 5 things that I've learned. Here's tweet number 1.
Mhm.
Here's tweet number 2.
Yeah.
So now I have six tweets, the one introducing, and then the 5 tweets that come after it. So now when people are like, how do I fill up my timeline with good stuff? That's how I do it. And then I'll use a tool like Hootsuite. And a tool like Hootsuite, it's Hootsuite. I can schedule the tweets out. So on Sunday, I can post all of 6 tweets into Hootsuite, and it'll send out one on Monday, one on Tuesday, one on Wednesday, one on Thursday. So you can do that as well if you'd like.
Can I, and I know we're getting a little bit long here, but could I just add one other thing? So there may be students watching this. And it's like, this is not, I want to go and work in water quality and work for NRCS, which is a federal agency that does natural resources conservation. It's like, why not write an article, 3 reasons why we should be proud of our water quality track record in agriculture, or here's 5 agencies who are working to protect the environment. Like if I'm working for NRCS and hiring people, I'm going to read that article to see if my organization shows up, and hopefully it will. But that's going to like draw me in. So
Yeah, one thing you can do with that article, sorry to interrupt, is that you can then tweet that article out and say, here's one of the organizations that I mentioned in my article at NRCS. And what are they going to do when they see that?
Yeah.
They're going to say, what's somebody saying about me, right? They're going to go read it. So it's something that you can absolutely work to your advantage, because people do want to know. Again, not being manipulative, but just trying to create that sense of intrigue. And so just letting people know that you mentioned, that's a great idea. And then the last, this doesn't necessarily apply in this case, but 5 to 10% of the time, I usually keep it to the 5%. I'll ask for something. So, hey, if you know of an internship, let me know. If could you let me know? Hey, if you are looking to hire, reach out to me. If I'm working with a business, it might be when we say, hey, follow our account, or if you're looking to buy this product or service, this is where to go and what we would appreciate you do. But usually these numbers are reversed. Usually 80% of the time, individuals and companies are talking about themselves and asking for stuff without giving any value. And then only 10 to 20% of the time they're offering value. And that's why their accounts don't get followed. You have to flip it and give more than you expect back. Very simple, but proven time and time and time again, and for thousands of years. So then the content strategy, as I mentioned, so some quick things that you can do. You can document your process, share what you're learning throughout the semester. Maybe you're doing an experiment on the side. I find that translating life experiences into what I'm learning in my field works well. So for example, as I've been studying jujitsu, the idea of how does that relate to day-to-day life? People are really curious about that. I am by means not even close to an expert, but people love that. So documenting experiments you're doing, documenting classes you're taking, documenting things that you've done, volunteer, all really, really helpful.
Yeah, we have a good sized percentage of this class that are actually going through the senior design project, which is a process class totally. So
yeah, and documenting and sharing out. Pat Flynn is a great example of somebody who's a multimillionaire who documented his process working on getting his certification as a LEED architect, becoming a LEED certified architect. And he's been able to make literally millions of dollars off of him just documenting that process of studying and what he was learning and what he thought was important. Sharing your perspectives on what you like, what you're interested in, what you're picking up from different things, cool examples of engineering and agriculture that you see that you just think is really cool. Sharing experiences, again, it can be in class, but it can be volunteering. It can be stuff you learned in other activities that relate back to your professional goals. So again, dog training for me is one, tracking wolves is another. And those two got me more opportunities professionally than any other activities I ever have done. Listing out and thinking about what are core questions your audience has. So what might people want to know that you have the competency of in a job interview? And starting to say, hey, one of the common questions people ask is really, what's the difference between BSE and XYZ? Again, I'm out of my league, so I'm not even going to take a stab there. But just answering those questions and seeing, like Bill Nye, can you do a good job at breaking things down and making the complex simple and approachable? Summarizing and curating the best of, which we just talked about. And then the other thing that's awesome is as you start to build capacity and you identify some people that you'd really like to get to know, start sharing and tweeting out their stuff, start commenting on their stuff, send them a direct message, send them a video message, like I mentioned, and say, hey, I'm doing an interview on top people I respect in the field. Any chance we could do a 10-minute Zoom call? Here are the questions I'm going to ask you, but I'd love to get your perspectives on these things. And I would say at least 80 to 85% of the time, I have had yes answers to my students and again, literally, I've had thousands of students in this class that it works. It works very, very frequently. And then when you start to build that capacity, like I said, you start to, the content ask strategy is now that I'm giving value, I can ask for assistance. That's when you can go ahead and do that. So the types of content, text, audio, video. So thinking about what works best for you. Video is easiest for me, and I just use my phone or Zoom. I do very limited editing because I'm worried more about getting the content out. I'm not worried about being a world-class, world-renowned video blogger, but figure out what works best for you. I do recommend that people have a website. So setting up a basic website, I use Wix as a recommended source, or WordPress primarily in my classes, but Squarespace works. There's several others, but setting up a basic website so that when somebody does a search for your name, they can find you, and it's like a digital resume, a digital initial interaction for an interview. That's what I think of it as. So in the classes that I teach, 2 of the classes that I teach, you do have to build out a professional website, and doesn't take a whole lot, but it puts you in that 1% of creators. So here's an example of Nuclear Katie. I'm going to just quick jump off of this and show you her website. So Katie is a former student who is a nuclear engineering, nuclear physicist, PhD student. As you see here, she's a clean energy advocate. And so really, really simple. Some of the things that she's done to blow up her profile, very simple, clear photo with a description of who she is. I love this because she has the nuclear stuff, and then she says non-nuclear stuff. So what she's trying to demonstrate when we talked about this in class is demonstrate she's not just a nuclear physicist and a nuclear engineer. She's more than that. And so if you go in here and you see, she'll post about things that she likes to do out west. She works with sled dogs and sled dog racing, like the Iditarod and things like that. So you start to get a sense of this is a complete person. They're not just pigeonholed. But if you go into some of these different sections, you'll see some of the stuff that she does. Okay, here she's describing uranium glass and how does uranium glass work? So some frequently asked questions. So her ability to take something and be able to break down and explain what it is. Simple, quick, easy, but it demonstrates, again, her ability to communicate. And then when she needs to blog, reading list on risk communication. So she took a risk communication class in our department. And what does she have? Hey, as a nuclear engineer, I'm taking and learning about risk communication.
Yeah.
Is there risk with nuclear? Yes, there is. So here's some things I've learned in a class I took of some resources to check out. How do we better communicate about the risk of nuclear to people? Here's books to check out. So very, very simple. This isn't like a doctoral dissertation. This is just a quick curation of articles to check out. And so again, simple, but powerful example of what you can do. And then I'll flip over to her Twitter account right away. If you go and look at her Twitter account, she has, here's a nuclear engineering graduate student with 12,000 plus followers. I mean, really impressive. And then what I love is that she's got again, some of the stuff that she's interested in. And then she puts hashtag ugly dogs because she likes dog mushing. But if you go through here, you'll see that she's tweeting and retweeting, and look at the mix of the amount of times she's retweeting versus her original tweets. She does a really nice mix. And so she has different stuff in here that shows, again, here's stuff about Spotify. She was talking the other day about concerning heavy water, and I love, she's an awesome student, but me and my homie drinking heavy water, so she likes, like, she speaks, and some people don't like it, but a lot of people do and have come to respect her. So you can see she does a really nice mix of demonstrating who she is.
And it's such a great example that obviously she's technically at the top of her game and super solid on the science. But again, so are 10,000 other students that are working in the area. But she's got this unique interestingness and also obviously a really great communicator.
Yep. And so again, you look through it. I think she's one of the best examples of how to be yourself. And now I'm not saying if you're not like her, don't try to mimic her personality. Be yourself. But I think it's a great example of showing how somebody who is in this arena can stand out and be human. The one thing I know that she has had challenges on, that just to speak from a science standpoint, that's been really interesting, is a lot of people who are in the clean energy say solar is the only way to do it. Nuclear is the only way to do it. Wind is, and she's like, BS, everything counts. And she's gotten a lot of flack for that, but she's opened up people's ideas and perspectives and created a following that she's good. She's a thought leader, because she's willing to say, no, my field isn't the only field that can solve this problem. So again, cool stuff that I see her as a great role model to check out. So that's the example of putting together a blog and sharing very simple examples. It doesn't need to be these huge, long diatribes. I like doing short videos of, hey, what is liquid uranium or whatever it was that I forgot already. But, hey, this is Don Stanley. And one thing people want to know is, what is a hashtag? So I'm going to really quickly explain, if you have no idea what a hashtag is, and how you can use it to your advantage. Or, what is this process in the engineering process, and why is it important? Again, I'm talking out of my league, but sharing some of those things. WordPress and Wix are great no cost or low cost options for building your sites, and there's others as well. As far as Twitter goes, the biggest thing, as I mentioned just with Katie, is looking through and starting to tweet out great content you find. So looking for opportunities to share stuff out and making sure that you just mention them, whether you're sharing it on Twitter or any other platform, as what you said earlier, shining light on people and helping amplify their work to your audience. Even if you have 50 followers, it means something to people who know that 50 new followers potentially seeing 50 new people seeing my content and potentially a couple of them following me is well worth it. Spending that time finding the influencers that I mentioned, doing the Google searches. I like using the Twitter video because it helps you to stand out in your feed. And that's where I like to do the thank yous, and once a week. Hey, Don Stanley here. And if you want to find a cool Facebook account to follow, or, hey, Don Stanley here. And today I was talking with one of my fellow professors about Ford Motor Company and what they did for him on Twitter. By the way, Scott Monty was the gentleman who founded that digital marketing setup. So if you want to follow a great person, check out Scott. He's not only a great Twitter follow, he's a great guy. Boom. I can do that once a week. But what that does is now people hear me and see me, and it helps me stand out. So when I walk into, and you and I have both had this experience, you walk into a meeting and people are like, hey, I've heard you, I've seen you. They don't necessarily say that, but they react that way. And it makes it much easier to interact. And then if you ask people who are thought leaders for an interview, or if they'd be willing to give you some feedback, even if it's tweeting answers back to you. As far as LinkedIn goes, making sure LinkedIn Help has if you just look up creating a great LinkedIn profile for college students, university students, they have a whole help section that'll walk you through. But completing your profile, making sure that you find people, so you can do an alumni search and find people who are Badger grads who work in your area of interest. That's a great way to start making connections. Make sure when you reach out to make connections, you send a notice to why you're reaching out to them. Don't just say, hey, I saw your profile. I thought it was interesting. I thought we should connect, because that's what people say to everyone. Everyone wants to feel like, no, you took a little bit of time to research me and know me. Hey, Don, I saw that, we both went to the UW-Madison, and I see you graduated this year, and, I have a lot of experience working for XYZ company. Just would love to connect with you and just learn from you by following you.
Mm-hmm.
Period. LinkedIn Pulse no longer is, so I should have gotten rid of that, but you can post articles on LinkedIn. So if you want to have a blog, take that same article, post it on LinkedIn. And then, as I mentioned, when you reach out, making new connections, send a personalized message. YouTube, I love doing because video works. So what I typically do is I'll shoot this video on this phone. I'll upload it to YouTube. I'll upload it to Facebook. I'll upload it to Instagram. I'll upload it to Twitter or any other social network. So I shoot once, send multiples. The reason I like using YouTube and having a YouTube channel is because Google's the #1 search engine in the world. Google #1, YouTube #2. So if you want to get found in any type of Google search, YouTube is extremely valuable. It'll increase your search ranking in normal. If you have a YouTube video, that will rank 50 times higher in a normal Google search.
Wow.
So if you have a little video of, hey, I'm Don Stanley and I'm studying BSE and what I'm doing is blah, 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 just a little intro video, super, super helpful. And then you can provide tips and advice as well. And then last, just think about, instead of applying all of this, think of 1 or 2 things you can take from this and start moving forward. I am totally available. So if it turns out you want to reach out to me and connect with me, you can reach me at my university email as well, which is D as in Delta, T as in Tango, Stanley @wisc.edu. But, I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to try to help out. This is an opportunity of a lifetime to be able to help yourself stand out and create opportunity for yourself and to scale impact at whatever level you want to become known, whether it's to get a job at a company or it's to have a bigger impact, helping future generations in some way at the level of Bill Nye or anywhere in between. So that's what I've got for you. I think if you find you do this, it's going to provide a lot of value for you.
Yeah. And Don, every time you do this, I think today the benefit for me is because we stretched this over 2 days, we did go a little bit longer, and I'll make sure that the students get some additional credit for having watched a longer video. So, but every time I come away like, and I'm writing notes down. If the students saw me looking down often, like Evan Carmichael, like I want to look that dude up. I want to go to Nuclear Katie and like see how she's doing, what she's doing. But it's just so very helpful. I think the one thing that you've talked about when you talk about blogging and websites, if you're going to then create a YouTube video or you're going to do these other new forms of content, it's always good to write things down because that solidifies your thinking. That helps you to get the research done. Because the other thing is, as an engineer, you want to make sure you got your facts right if you're going to try to create value and create content.
So what I do, just as a quick tip, I put 3 bullet points on this. I put it next to my camera, and that's my talking points. Yeah. So instead of having a script, and I can do the same thing on my phone, although I can put notes on, but I work better with sticky notes rather than getting distracted by a text app. But yeah, you're spot on. And then what I also do in the videos underneath my YouTube videos and not in the comments in the description area is say, here's resources that I pulled from. So if you want to check sources, boom, there you go.
So thank you so much. I'm going to be asking also my students to do some summary, and it might be like, what are the top 5 things you learned about content curation or about branding and things like that as a biological systems engineer. So perfect presentation. Thank you so much. Thanks also for hanging with me over the course of 2 days. And with that, talk to you soon, okay?
All right, take care. Good luck, everybody. Have a great semester.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you.